Hey everyone, and welcome to Brent's Notepad, where ideas become insight. I'm Brent Shelton, inviting you to think deeper, lead better, and live more intentionally. In each episode, I dive into big questions and meaningful ideas drawn from books, research, and real life. Today, we're diving into Chapter 3 of Exploring Leadership, the second edition, written by Richard Bolden, Jonathan Gosling, and Beverley Hawkins. In Chapter 3, the authors examine individual perspectives of leadership by considering the properties commonly associated with leaders, such as their traits, styles, skills, and competencies. In doing so, the authors explore common beliefs about what makes someone a leader, how leaders behave, what leaders are good at, and how all of these things come together in powerful ways. All right, let's start with leadership traits. Traits as a whole are typically considered to be the distinguishing characteristics that are possessed by an individual which describe their appearance or personality. Now, considering leadership traits, these characteristics tend to describe leaders in very masculine or Western ways, such as being assertive or logical and outgoing. Now, you might have heard of the so-called great man theory, which is the idea that some people are just destined to lead as they possess the objective and universal leadership characteristics that are necessary to lead. However, the problem with this and many other leadership trait theories, minus their bias, is that they are making the assumption that these leadership traits are stable across situations, genders, cultures, and demographics. And they reflect a very narrow view of what leaders are actually like. And that's why scholars began to shift away from asking what are leaders like to what do leaders do or how do leaders behave. And this brings us into leadership styles, which are really just patterns of behavior that leaders practice. A common distinction between leadership styles is between task-oriented and relationship-oriented leadership. Task-oriented leaders focus on getting the job done efficiently, while relationship-oriented leaders prioritize motivating and inspiring their team, fostering collaboration and trust. However, the question becomes, which style is most effective? And this is where the situational approach to leadership comes in. Situational leadership suggests that leaders should adapt their leadership style to suit what the situation demands. And while situational leadership does get us a little closer to the current understanding of leadership, it still suggests the underlying assumption that there is an objectively right way to lead. And this brings us to the skills approach to leadership, which explores the capabilities that facilitate effective leadership. Leadership skills, according to the scholar Robert Katz, includes hard and technical skills, which involve the knowledge and application of systems or tools. It also includes the softer human skills, such as empathy and being able to effectively communicate and build relationships. And finally, he suggests that there are thinking or conceptual skills, such as the ability to think strategically, work with ideas, and navigate complexity. And while Katz's leadership skills are very intuitive, they also fail to explain how building leadership skills actually results in better leadership, making a group, an organization, or a system more effective. And from here, we can shift from leadership skills to leadership competencies. Leadership competencies require a leader to know when to employ their skills and which style or traits might be more effective in each situation. Therefore, leadership competencies are measurable capabilities that connect a leader's skills, style, or traits to the outcomes of their group or organization. And here, scholars are asking the question, how can leaders demonstrably improve performance? And with this mindset, leadership becomes grounded in evidence-based results, rather than just someone's intuition or their perceptions. And while understanding leadership competencies does get us closer to understanding leadership more fully, it still suggests that leadership resides in the individual. That is, the leader and their qualities and their behaviors and their abilities are central to driving the outcome. And it neglects the fact that the followers themselves actually play a critical role in whether a leader fails or succeeds. And this brings us to the final concept discussed in Chapter 3, which challenges us to rethink the way we view followers and the way we view followership. The author suggests that followers aren't just passive recipients of the influence of a leader, they actually play an active role that shapes leadership outcomes. In this way, leadership becomes a social process that is co-created by leaders and followers. And if you really think about it, without followers, leadership as a practice really doesn't exist. So, what does this mean for anyone who is trying to understand or trying to develop themselves as a leader? Well, it means that we have to start thinking critically about the assumptions we make. Leadership isn't just about being charismatic and task-oriented or technically skilled. It's about understanding people, situations, and systems. It's about knowing what skills to apply and when, and being able to connect those skills to the needs and motivations of those of who you lead. It's about seeing leadership as a relationship rather than just an individual property, and remembering that there is not a single right way to lead. By looking at traits, styles, skills, and competencies in this way, Chapter 3 of Exploring Leadership really helps us understand both the strengths and limitations of focusing on the individual leader. It reminds us that leadership is as much about followers, context, and the social process as it is about the person in charge. And perhaps the most important takeaway is that while leadership can often feel mysterious or innate, it also is something that can be developed, refined, and shared, and it is an activity that is available to anyone at any time. As we wrap up, I'd like you to consider this. When you think of a leader, what do you see? Is it their traits, the way they behave, the skills they demonstrate, or maybe it's the way they bring others along with them? Well, I'm hoping after this podcast, your answer is, it's all of the above. Because with this understanding, we can see leadership not as a static quality, but as an evolving practice. Leadership is about influence, relationship, and context as much as it is about the individual leader themselves. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Brent's Notepad, where ideas become insight. Until next time, lead better, think deeper, and live more intentionally.